Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Well, if you live in the United Kingdom or indeed anywhere in the world, you won't have failed to know that we've been living through some momentous events over the past couple of days, which means of course that we've been very busy here, but I still have been able to get some work done up in my loft, and this video will kind of document what I've been doing and how far I've got, and because certain things will mean that I can get up into my loft a little bit more over the next week and a bit. I'm going to document what I can do during this time. So as you can see, I have been slowly putting more stuff, more greeblies onto the ship. I have extended the bottom conning tower down a little bit further, and as I say, I've been putting in more kinds of detailing, paneling along the ship itself, including at the back here with the directional fins coming off the engine. So we continue to just put more greeblies on, more sanding and filling, and up here you'll see that I have reduced the size of the structure that was coming off from the conning tower, because I wanted the overall shape to be a little bit more flatter and more streamlined. So we'll continue with the greebling, we'll continue with putting things on, and I do hope that over the next week and a bit I can finish the fabrication off to the extent where I can put on a base coat, and I hope to include that in this video. So onward and upward, we'll continue, and I'll keep you abreast with what's going on. Here we go. So the work continues, putting in details around the bottom area, as you can see, and more filling in around the this area here, and on the other side it's the same, and continuing with detailing around the front end of the ship. What I have been working on is this area here, and what I've developed I'll show you. So I developed some inserts which can actually be attached to the front bits here. I'll just put them in. I'll put them on for you. Hang on a second. Get them into focus. So they will go along here like that, and they clip on. So they'll fit on along here, and then I can play with how I actually position them. Oops. Actually, that's the wrong one. Just only realised it's not that one, it's that one. That's right. So I'm going to put them along here. Oop. There you go, that's better. So as you can see, I can play with how they're positioned along here, and then I'm going to work backwards to just bulk that bit up there. I'm going to put some wiring onto it as well, and so on. But that just gives it more of a feel of a probes sticking out along that area there. Right. So onward and upward. Slow work, but it's getting there. Again, more filling and so on and so forth. I want to try and get a top coat on soon, because that will then give me an idea of how much more I've got to do on this. I do now have a deadline, because basically I've been invited to contribute to volume 3 of the Scratch Build magazine series, and that particular volume is to do with spaceships. So I want to be able to get this one finished so I can include it in as a contribution to that particular publication. So I don't have too long to sort of get this done and finished, and that's why I'm kind of trying to get as much done as I possibly can in the time available. Right, onward and upward, let's continue. So more detail is being added, and just to show you some of the bits that I've been doing. So I've added these forward-looking probes along here and onto the other side, which I'll show you in a second. And I'm starting to develop the top bit a bit more. And I've also spent, well, the majority of the things that I've done, which you really can't see because they're kind of undetectable in the sense that it's basically filling and sanding. So my time has been taken up not so much putting on detail, more with just filling in the bits, because as I said previously, I think that the overall fabrication is kind of there. I don't want to add too much. Less is more is my motto, as you know, and to over egg it would take away from the aesthetic image of it. And therefore, the order of the day will be simply to uh, add the small details, the small greeblies, which add surface detail rather than adding vast structures to it. But there you are. That's where we're at the moment. So sanding, filling, and adding small details, which is what I'm doing. We're nearly there. We're nearly there, but it's slow progress, as a lot of model makers will tell you. When they get to this area, it's just slow, and you need to just persevere and keep on it. I will probably get it finished within the next couple of weeks, but yeah, it's finding the time to come up here and doing the thing. So in the meantime, in order to kind of break with tradition on this channel and have a little break from this model, I thought I would do something a little bit different in order to round off this particular video and talk to you a little bit about some of my influences. Influences in terms of the kind of science fiction that I read and the kind of books that I read, to give you an idea of where I'm coming from creatively wise. I just thought that would be a bit of fun. There are other channels that do this, the 10 best science fiction books I've read and so on. So I thought, just out of pure a bit of fun while I'm trying to finish this off, to yeah, just go through some of the stuff that I particularly like reading and give you some recommendations, because who knows, you might find them interesting too, and that might give you some visual stimulation while you're reading it. Okay, so here are some of my books that I like reading. So the first book to recommend to you is Dune, um, by Frank Herbert. Now, this is a very famous science fiction book, and those of you who might have seen the recent film adaptation will no doubt be familiar with its plot. It takes place many thousands upon thousands of years into the future, where the universe is governed by feudal houses, and it deals with many, many different subjects like religion, ecology, and so on. I read this book when I was a small boy, and I've come back to it regularly. Forget about all the other sequels to it, because, in my opinion, I don't particularly like sequels. I think a book should stand on its own, really. Perhaps Lord of the Rings is an exception to that, but Dune does stand on its own. It's a wonderful world building book, full of mythology and depth. And yes, I'm not going to, by the way, give you plot lines or so much, and because I don't want to spoil things for you if you haven't really read it. I'm just going to say that it's definitely a book that every science fiction enthusiast should have at least have read once in their lifetime. But that's, and I say, these books are in no particular order, by the way. But that's one of my first choices. Moving on, we have The Eye in the Sky by Philip K. Dick. Now, Philip K. Dick, again, is a very, very famous sci-fi author. He wrote many books which recent films have been based on, like Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which became, of course, Blade Runner. And but his main kind of themes that he wrote about were reality and what if she is real, and what do you consider to be human. And these books, this particular book, The Eye in the Sky, deals with a group of people who, through a particularly scientific accident, find themselves drifting in and out of each other's dreams and reality. It's, it sounds more like a fantasy book, but it actually isn't. It is science fiction, and as I say, as an introduction to Philip K. Dick's work, I think you'd enjoy it. Um, this book, I think, is still available in print, and you can get it on Amazon. So yeah, Eye in the Sky, a very clever book about different realities and how people people are drifting in and out of each other's realities and dreams and nightmares as they try to survive in other people's minds. The next one is Paul Anderson's Tor Zero. Now this is rather an old book. I'm sure you can still get it in print. Paul Anderson, again, another famous American science fiction writer. This particular book was written at a time where the theories about the expanding and contracting universe were quite prevalent, and the theory at the time was that the universe would expand to a finite extent, and then trillions upon trillions upon trillions of years in the future would begin to contract back again into perhaps what would become another Big Bang. This theory has now been slightly debunked. We now know that the universe appears to be expanding forever, but this particular book is set in that universe, and it deals with a group of colonists in a ship which, because of a malfunction, the ship continues to accelerate forever and ever and ever, getting faster and faster and faster towards the Tor, which is a constant of the speed of light. And as it approaches that particular Tor Zero, it's going so fast that the universe itself is growing older and older and older every second, and it approaches the kind of big crunch. And that's the premise of the story, and it's mind-boggling when it gets to the end. But it's a very good read. So again, I recommend it to you. Alan Dean Foster's To the Vanishing Point. Alan Dean Foster isn't a particularly well-known American science fiction author, although he has done a lot of film adaptations, most notably for Star Trek and Star Wars. But this is one of his original novels. It is more of fantasy than it is science fiction, although it has a lot of science fiction motifs in it. Very basically, it's about a group of an ordinary group of Americans, a family who pick up a very strange and mysterious hitchhiker on their way from New York to Los Angeles. And what happens is, well, to say that it is mind-boggling and mind-blowing, it would be an understatement. Basically, it's the fact that reality itself becomes unhinged during the journey, and it's the job of this mysterious hitchhiker to try and put reality back together again. And this ordinary group of Americans are caught up in this epic fantasy and quest. I read it some time ago. I do read it on occasions. It really is very good. So again, I recommend it to you. Now we have two books that can be taken together: Joe Heidelman's The Forever War and The Forever Free. Now, The Forever Free is a sequel to The Forever War. The Forever War is very famous in science fiction circles. It's one of the best anti-war sci-fi books ever written, as far as I'm concerned. It's a satire on the Vietnam War, on which Joe Heidelman was actually a vet in that war. And it deals with a war between man and an alien species that takes place across the galaxy. But because of time dilation effects, the the few years that a soldier would spend fighting in the war um, takes place in such a way that thousands upon thousands of years will elapse upon Earth. And so when you join the army, you've basically lost your life to the army and to the galaxy, because you'll never return back to the place where you started. And it's a fascinating book of hard science and sociology coupled in, as I say, in this anti-war rhetoric, and it's very, very good. And as I say, and the Forever Free is a sequel to the Forever War, dealing with the aftermath of the veterans when they return to civilian life and what happens to them. So excellent book, excellent two books, and I recommend that you read them together. Although of course you're free to read them separately, but very good. Two of my favourite books by Arthur C. Clarke. You would think that I would might have chosen 2001: A Space Odyssey, but I preferred the film to the book because I think the book is rather technical, whereas he comes alive a bit better with these two books. Childhood's End is a real classic and deals with the coming of an alien species that, well, I won't spoil the ending if you haven't read it, but basically it's not an alien. It's not the kind of alien invasion you actually think it is, and the ending is a great twist and a fantastic way of exploring the issues of what would happen if aliens came to Earth. And Rendezvous with Rama, a wonderful book about encountering an alien artifact in the solar system, which is so mysterious and so puzzling that even by the end of the book, you just really haven't, along with with the explorers, fully appreciated and discovered all of its secrets. But it is a clever example of what might happen if man encountered some kind of vast alien artifact in our solar system, which, because of its speed and the way it's traveling, is completely indifferent to the human explorers that are trying to uncover its mysteries. A great book, and again, fully recommend it. Moving on, we have two books by Alfred Bester. He is considered to be, among aficionados of science fiction, probably the producer of two of the greatest science fiction books ever written, and I have to agree with them because these are the two. The Demolished Man and Stars My Destination, or when it was published in Britain, it was called Tiger Tiger. Deal with two anti-heroes. Again, I won't go into the plot lines because I don't want to spoil it. But these two books are proto-cyberpunk novels, but the images and the vistas, the concepts, the themes, and basically the pictures that Alfred Bester paints in these two novels are are staggering, awe-inspiring. They're basically one's a murder mystery, and the other one is a revenge novel. The Stars My Destination is probably best summed up as being like The Man in the Iron Mask by Alexander Dumas, but and it is a revenge novel. But as I say, just to say that doesn't do them justice. You've got to read them, and I absolutely guarantee you will not be disappointed. Both these novels blew my mind when I was young. They still continue to do so because of the themes and basically the pictures they both paint. Wonderful, wonderful novels. Please pick them up if you haven't done so. If you're into hard science, then hard science fiction, that is, then you can't go wrong with Larry Niven's Ringworld. I'm sure most of you who are science fiction fans will know the premise. It's basically, if you've played the game Halo, you will know what the Ringworld is because Halo contains a Ringworld. It's basically a kind of cut down Dyson sphere, which is a ring of matter, millions and millions and millions of miles in length and millions of miles wide, which basically encircle a sun. And on the inner surface of this ring, you'd have the surface area of at least 300,000 Earths, and what you could actually put on the inner surface of the ring. And this is a novel about set hundreds and hundreds of years in the future, where a group of explorers, two human and two alien, get together to explore this artifact, this huge, gigantic artifact. It is basically a mega structure to beat all mega structures, and it's a great classic of a novel. And again, the visions and vistas that Larry Niven sums up are awe-inspiring. So a wonderful novel there, and again, I recommend it to you. James Blish's Black Easter and the Day After Judgment. Not science fiction as such, more science fantasy. Although it's set very firmly in a in a reality, an everyday reality, but it deals with the premise of what would happen if magic actually existed and actually worked in a scientific sense. And it deals with the idea that a megalomaniac arms dealer, perhaps modeled after certain American presidents, who knows, uh, they enlist the help of a egotistical black magician to summon up in one night all of the demons of hell, and what would happen if that happened. And again, if you're into hard science fiction, you might balk at this because it sounds like fantasy. But I can assure you, it isn't. It isn't your everyday run of the mill fantasy novel. It's a very clever novel, and one that I keep going back to again day after day, year after year. Um, uh, I love it. It's just a lovely excursion into the worlds of what if, and I recommend it to you. Stephen Baxter is a name that a lot of modern science fiction readers are familiar with. He's an English writer, and these are two of my favourite novels by him. The first one, called Time, as you can see here on the left, it deals with a mad entrepreneur who wants to uh, colonize the solar system, and in doing so, embarks upon a quest, an odyssey, which takes him, well, basically to the ends of time itself. It's a complex novel, but very rewarding, and it has one of the greatest sequences of far future exploration I've ever encountered. A great novel to get your teeth into. Very clever. And the Time Ships is a sequel to the Time Machine by H.G. Wells. It was actually authorized by H.G. Wells's estate, and as many critics have said, rather what's the word? they've said it. They've said it in a rather blasphemous way that the Time Ships is actually a better novel than the original. Uh, it deals with it's a sequel, and it deals with what happens when the time traveler returns to the present, and then decides to take one further trip into time. And because it's written 100 years after, more or less 100 years after the H.G. Wells's original novel, it takes up the modern day theories and themes of modern physics and time travel, so that it's a lot more plausible perhaps than the original novel, but a fantastic read, and really opens your mind to the vast vistas of deep time and deep space that could possibly exist. A great novel. Now, the Texts by Stephen Hall is not a science fiction novel at all. Neither is it really a fantasy novel. It's difficult to explain what this novel is. You could call it postmodern. It's a detective story about a man in search of who he really is, but it's also an exploration into what is real, what is fantasy, what how the actual worlds of fiction and text itself can impinge into real life. Difficult to really give you a full précis of what this novel is. You just have to read it. I read it in one sitting, more or less, because it was unput-downable. I couldn't put it down. Yeah, I had to just read it to the very, very end. It is a very, very rich, very, very. It's comic. It's dark. It's exciting. It's basically, I suppose, what would happen if you took the Matrix and Jaws and Columbo, and you mix them all up together and put them together in a novel. It's very, very. And also if you took something like the Da Vinci Code, it's and stick it all together, and then you have the Rorschach text. It's very, very clever, very, very ambitious, and I love the novel. So get a chance, pick up a copy and have a read. This is the penultimate book in my little collection. It's called Mission by Patrick Tilley. It's what would happen if one day you met Jesus, but that sounds very religious. This is not, I say, not a religious book. It is not a religious book at all. It deals with, well, it's the best science fiction, fantasy, philosophy book I've ever read, and it deals with so many issues and so many ideas. It's cosmic. It really is cosmic in its scope, and it takes the reader on into such a huge universe that they never thought existed. But again, it is not religious at all. So don't consider it as such. It's because the Jesus that is explored in this particular novel has got absolutely nothing to do with the Christian Jesus that is part of Christianity. It's a completely different thing, and when you read it, you will well, I think it will change your life. I really do. And Patrick Tilley's other novel is called Fade Out, and this is the best close encounter novel I've ever read. The alien depicted in Fade Out is totally beyond any alien you've ever read or ever imagined, and it deals with very, very realistically what would happen if an alien landed, and the Americans and the Russians and the Chinese and the world governments got involved in trying to find out what was going on. It's a fantastic. Well, this was his first novel, and it's a fantastic first novel. As it says on the blurb, the classic close counter novel, often copied but never surpassed. And I agree with it. It's never been surpassed. It really will hold you from chapter one to the end, and it will leave you with a lot of questions, which well, you'll spend many, many months thinking about. Excellent novel. Get a chance to read it, go ahead and do so. And finally, we have Olaf Stapleton's Last and First Men and Star Maker. How to sum these two novels up? Basically, they deal with the history, the future history of the cosmos, over billions and billions and billions and billions of years of evolution. What would happen to man? What will happen to the universe itself? These are very, very famous novels. I will warn you that they were written back in the 1930s, so therefore their style is dense and it takes a bit of getting into. But once you do start exploring them, they are remarkable feats of world building and imagination. And I can honestly say to you that once you have read them, you will never ever forget them. They are the Mount Everest, I think, of science fiction novels, and worth every single moment of the climb. So there you are, everybody. That's my little excursion into the world of science fiction and fantasy novels that I enjoy reading. I hope you like that little excursion. A little bit different to what I usually do, but there you are. Hope it gave you a few ideas and a few bits of inspiration. Don't worry, the next video, oops, turn it around, we'll be back on the model, on the ship, which I think I'm going to call the Sword of Persuasion. That's the title for the ship. That's what I'm going to call it, the Sword of Persuasion. And those of you who are still with me on this video will know that I talked about the Joe Huddleman's for the Forever War, and I envisaged some of these ships actually belonging to that particular universe. So that was the inspiration that the novel gave me the inspiration to try set my eyes at my ideas of giving these ships kind of a backstory. Anyway, thank you for watching, guys. Hope you have a good week, and I'll see you in the not too distant future. All right, thanks for watching, guys. Bye now.